Truck tire blowouts are some of the worst truck accident cases that I've litigated. They're almost always deadly or they involve catastrophic injuries. The key to understanding these tire blowout cases is that they are also almost always completely preventable. I've now litigated quite a few of these cases, probably more than any other lawyer in Michigan. So I want to give you some thoughts on how to litigate these and what to look for. The first is these are not your typical types of cases. They do tend to be very expert intensive. They also tend to be very expensive, mostly because of the experts. Also because these are cases where you really have to sue basically everybody, all the possible parties. And the reason is a lot of times they'll be pointing the finger at each other and blaming each other, which helps because they can make the case for you. But you have to understand if you don't do that, or the way the defense will almost always try to approach these cases in the beginning is always some version of these are act of God type cases. These are completely unforeseeable. And that's because then there's a legal doctrine called sudden emergency that they can invoke as a way to avoid taking full responsibility for the crash and for the truck tire blowout. But the key is it really cannot be further from the truth. These truck tire blowout accidents are truly almost always preventable if they do what they're supposed to do under the federal regulations and the safety regulations involving pre-trip inspections and maintenance. So my first tip is in the beginning of the case, sue everybody. You can always dismiss parties after discovery, but more often than not, you're going to find things or documents, or like I said, the defendants are going to blame other defendants, and that's going to help you in building your case and finding the at-fault negligent party or parties, because there can be more than one at fault. I'll give you an example. In one case we had, we sued everybody, including the truck driver and the wheel manufacturer in this case, and the stud cap nut manufacturer. And the predictable defense was that the lug nuts had not been tightened sufficiently, and they were blaming the driver, like they always tend to do in these cases, and blame the driver. It turned out that there was actually this ongoing internal exchange between the tire manufacturer and the manufacturer of the studs about how the wheels, the thickness of the wheel had increased over time, and that increased thickness prevented the cap nuts from being able to be tightened with enough threads, causing there to be movement that then allowed the nuts to break off and let the tire come off, which then, in my case, fell off and crashed into a car that was in the wrong place at the wrong time, killing the occupants. So the takeaways are initially, because you do need to find all the evidence and engage in wide discovery, is sue all the possible parties, including the manufacturers. The second is often the defense will make the case for you. And the third is if you don't sue everybody, you may never find these smoking gun memos or conversations like the ones that we found in the case I just described to you. So I guess now we should talk about what is a tire blowout. A truck tire blowout accident occurs when a tire suddenly deflates, or more often than not, basically comes completely or partially apart. You often see these exploded tire fragments along the side of the highway, on the shoulder of the road. This causes a couple things. In another case that I handled, which was called Nunez, unfortunately, the steer tire blew and it caused the truck driver to lose control and slam into my client's car, pinned him against the median wall, where unfortunately he passed away. But it's very common to see drivers lose control when you have these and cause the truck to veer into oncoming traffic or into traffic that's on either side of them. Another very common way that these crashes occur is in the first example I just spoke with you about, where unfortunately someone is just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you are, and you have this kind of blowout, you have this tire debris and fragments, or sometimes the actual tire bouncing on the road. And if it crashes into the vehicle, it's like a missile, and it will destroy anything in its path. And that's why these cases do tend to be so catastrophic. So those are just some thoughts on these types of cases and how you should handle them. The most common types of tire blowouts that I've seen and that I've worked on involve normally underinflation of tires, worn down or tread bare tires or tread burn tires, as truckers tend to call them, tread separation issues, driving on a spare tire and not replacing it and driving for too long, a manufacturing defect in the tire or tread. Be careful and look very carefully at your venue if that's the type of issue you have, because there will be certain states like Michigan that have very, very tough product liability laws. And if you can find a more responsible defendant with a higher priority, you may want to take a second look at whether you want to even bring a product liability case. Or, as I've done in a number of cases, you can bring the product liability case, but bring it in another venue. In addition to that, there's always, and this is probably the most common, negligent maintenance, negligence repair, negligent inspection. As a group, that's probably the most common cause for these kinds of tire blowouts. And finally, overloading or excessive load. That's when companies put profits over safety, and they really load down these trucks, and it causes all sorts of problems. A lot of times truckers will flip over when they're making turns, but remember, there's all that weight on those wheels, and the wheels are not meant to carry that much weight, and then you could have, again, the debris and the blowout as a result of excessive weight. So I hope this helped. If you do have any questions, feel free to call. Unfortunately, I probably handled more of these cases than any lawyer in Michigan, so if I can help you or try and give you some good advice, I certainly will.